Welcome to Talkin Science, where we dive into the stories making headlines in the world of science and space. I'm Matt Miller. Dr. Brad Tucker is here. Brad, happy Tuesday.
How's it going?
Doing well, my friend. Let's get the headlines in this, the 42nd week of 2021. Australia is set to join an elite club when we build a rover for Artemis. An intermittent radio signal from the centre of the Milky Way has been discovered by Aussie astronomers. And a Jupiter-like exoplanet orbiting a white dwarf gives us a glimpse at our future.
This is Trekzone's Talkin Science. And you can get exclusive behind-the-scenes info and first-play access to all Trekzone podcasts by becoming a member today. Click join on every Trekzone video on YouTube. Go to the trek.zone/support or scan the QR code on screen throughout the show.
William Shatner made it to the Kármán line and back again last week. I'd say boldly going where no Star Trek actor has gone before, but Dr. Mae Jemison flew on STS-47 in '92 before appearing in a guest role on The Next Generation a year later. James Doohan's Ashes flew a decade ago too, but still, we can say a 90-year-old Canadian-born man has become the oldest person to fly into space, and we still love him.
And was a captain on Star Trek. You missed that qualifier.
Okay,
this
all
is how
right.
the whole new field is how many qualifiers can you be? Jeff Bezos was the boldest billionaire in space. Richard Branson was the first mustache in space with the billionaire. We can go on and on forever, and it will keep going. But the emotion we saw from William Shatner, I think, was really amazing and was quite real after his flight.
Yeah, absolutely right. And a bit of shade too from his former helmsman, George Takei. We won't go into that. We'll get straight into the headlines. The Russian film crew have arrived back on terra firma. Now it's time to film the rest of the movie. This might be a foreign film worth catching, Brad.
Yeah, they haven't had a lot of detail about exactly what they're, other than basics of the plot or timelines and that sort of stuff. But we do know, for the most part, it's successful. Indeed, the other two Russian cosmonauts on board the space station were extras, so they had a role. And when the timeline is and that sort of thing. But I will be interested to see it, and we'll also get into movie reviews, I guess, now in the not too distant future.
Absolutely right. Well, China has launched another crew to their space station, this time for an extended 6-month stay.
Yeah, we were just saying last month how they came down after 3 months. Well, now the next crew has immediately gone up, and as you said, will be up there for 6 months, which will be now the longest crew up there, beating their previous record. So, they are clearly moving fast in all of their activity, and they still have a lot of work to get to their space station fully operational. So it's not surprising, but yeah, they're not wasting any time.
Well, Brad, an Australian-made rover is set to be launched to the moon as part of the Artemis program in 2026, making us just the fifth nation to enter the elite club.
Yeah, and this really is an elite club. The US, Russia, China, and India have all sent rovers to the moon. Now, India's didn't work. They had a failed landing with their craft and their rover. The Russians sent quite a few. They've only had two that have worked. The US had three, but they were essentially moon buggies driven by the astronauts. And then China has had two, and China only has the current working one. So to be number 5 or number 4, if it works, really is a rare limited club. This isn't just everyone doing something. This isn't just another mission to the moon. This would be a very, very big achievement for the Australian space industry.
Absolutely. Well, the plan for the Foundation Services rover is to be an explorer to collect lunar soil containing oxygen atoms, with another piece of equipment planned to extract said oxygen to sustain a colony on the moon, Brad.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about how it's all about fuel and resources around the moon, and oxygen is no different. Obviously, you need it for humans, you need it for fuel as well. So this fits in a lot with what Australia's good. We know we're good at these sorts of missions. This is something early on that NASA said when we signed on to the Artemis, that hey, your expertise in robotics and finding stuff in the ground is going to be needed here. So this is kind of the perfect combination, especially considering we worked on things like the Hayabusa 2 mission, that Japanese mission, and in lots of other kind of soil and sample and analyzing missions. It's a really exciting venture that this rover is going to be on.
Well, Aussie businesses from across the country, as well as research organisations, will be able to apply from later this year to be part of the consortium to develop the rover, Brad. It's all part of the government's $50 million Trailblazer program.
Yeah, and this really will be a national effort. It's not just going to be Adelaide or Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane. You will see lots of activity from lots of groups. And this is, how overseas they do it. Even if NASA builds something, lots of different components are built by either contractors or different NASA centers. This will be no different. So it's going to be exciting to see the national involvement and it come together and it really be an Australian thing. And when the Australian Space Agency was formed, everyone's like, well, are they just going to be this big organization? Where are they going to start hiring people? And it was always going to be a lean organization to support and fund activities with all the other great people already happening here. And this is the perfect example and culmination of building that to it. They don't need the space agency to do it themselves, but to oversee and overfund all of the groups that come together. That's what it's about.
Well, aside from the formation of the space agency itself, Brad, this is probably the single biggest news story of our burgeoning space industry so far, I reckon.
Yeah, look, when we signed on to this, they announced the Moon to Mars mission, and we were sending Artemis. They said there was going to be a few different programs, and we were always going to have one big thing. And then it was shortlisted to a few options, and we've kind of been waiting what that big thing is. So it really is an exciting thing, and it's going to get everyone behind. It's going to get everyone in the industry involved, and it's going to put us on the map, so to speak. Again, being the fourth or fifth country, depending on how you define it, to put a rover, and assuming it works on the moon, is really hard. It's not an easy task. There's going to be a lot of development of not just the technology, but the people to build it, which will pay dividends into the future.
Absolutely right. Well, next up, astronomers have been baffled for over a year by an intermittent radio signal emanating from near Sagittarius A, the center of our galaxy. It's turning on and off over a period of several months, Brad.
Yeah, and it's turning off at random times. And so things in space generally happen at a regular period. That's because they're orbiting around and that has a set, they're spinning around, so that has a set period. Things that kind of turn on and off randomly always get our attention. There's obviously some sort of thing happening here that isn't explained by a lot of the traditional mechanisms, or more importantly, the things we already know about. And so the fact that we are seeing something new is quite exciting, because it's clearly saying there is a new class of object here that we haven't discovered yet.
Well, the first detection of this signal was made by ASCAP, the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder, who recently signed hosting agreements with the South African and Australian governments, and it's appeared 4 times in just a few weeks, Brad.
Yeah, it's obviously happening quite often. It's not just once or twice. And as you said, the fact that it's detected by ASCAP, it's a very new sensitive array and a new sensitive instrument. And this has always been one of the things that when we build these sorts of things, we're going to see new things that have been out of the reach or not detectable by previous surveys because of sensitivity or how big or how often we can look. And we kind of know that's the beginning. I think this is the exciting thing in the early stages. They're finding these new objects, so they now, as they operate more often, as they get into more full operation modes, and then as ASCAP is built into the full square kilometer array, we expect to find more things like this and even other things.
Well, not only is the timing random, but the signal strength can vary as well, becoming 100 times brighter in the radio spectrum. So it could be aliens, but likely just a new celestial object.
It's never aliens, and that's it till it is. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's the sort of thing that, yes, it is random, but there's other things. This is really reminiscent of Tabby Star, the star that was going around, or the object going around a star that detected by Kepler that had very random blips, and the depths or the strengths of the blips, the transit features, were random as well. It was a very head scratcher. And then they kind of concluded that it was probably breaking up or disintegrating comets orbiting around, something on the far edge of that solar system seeing it. So it's just something that we know physically exists and can physically exist. You just never thought you'd be able to see it. And I think that's the exciting thing, that we know there's lots of physical things out there, but we just never really put them to the top of the list because you just never planned on finding them. And this is the perfect example of that.
Well, a team led by PhD student Ziting Wong explored multiple theories. The likely answer was a pulsar, but Parkes found nothing. The Meerkat radio telescope in South Africa saw nothing when its snapshots of the signals came through as well. Then, after 3 months in February this year, a single signal that was almost as strong as the original was picked up before fading away. Plus, what you're talking about there as well, Brad, many other possibilities as well. Detective caps on, indeed.
Yeah, and this is, bread and butter of what we do. We survey, you find new objects, and then you're trying to understand it. You either, go after something and find what you think should exist and dial, the parameters until you find it, or you do the reverse. You kind of open the parameters, find things, and then try and figure out what it is. It's a two-way street of discovery, and this is a perfect example of that.
Well, lastly this week, Brad, a gas giant planet orbiting a white dwarf has given astronomers a glimpse of what the future of our solar system might look like.
Yeah, I mean, the future of Earth is we're doomed because the sun's going to destroy us. But it's always been this question: what's going to happen to the outer planets? What's going to happen to the gas giants? We know the sun will swell as a red giant. Mercury, Venus, Earth, we're all toast. Mars, maybe. But what's going to happen to the Jupiters and then Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune? And so finding a planet very similar to Jupiter in terms of size and distance, and then around a white dwarf, something we know our sun will be as it's gone through its phase. And so this star has gone through those phases our sun is a really, again, it's a unique example of seeing something that, well, what is going to happen? What does it look like? What does it mean? And what does it mean? And what can we apply for the understanding of our solar system?
Well, our main sequence star is around halfway through its life, and when it depletes its hydrogen, the core will contract before puffing out to a red giant. As you say, that's goodbye Mercury, Venus, and Earth, and maybe Mars as well. Then, after another few 100 million years, the fluff will dissipate, leaving behind the dense white core. With a weaker gravitational pull, planets will orbit a little further away, which is what the University of Tasmania's Dr. Joshua Blackman led team discovered with this white dwarf system.
Exactly. You get to see what is going to happen after this whole phase in the cycle because the density or the mass of the star changes a little bit, its radius, its orbit. So how are the outer planets going to affect contract? And given that they won't be destroyed by the red giant, obviously something had to happen. So this is kind of the exciting thing, I think, to see this in real detail. Is that yes, this is kind of the future. This is what we can expect. And again, it's just another glimpse of finding these different configurations. We know that stars go through these life cycles, so we know planets go through these life cycles and change. So it's great to see the different pieces. Just as important as seeing the stars and planets being born and formed, it's good to see them at the other end.
And Brad, this isn't the first time a Jupiter-sized exoplanet has been found orbiting a white dwarf, but in past discoveries, they've broken the mold of what we thought would happen. Now this one adds to the correct theory count, as it were.
Yeah, in some cases they've kind of gotten closer to the star, which was quite surprising. They become what you call a hot Jupiter, so they're orbiting a star very close. Now, the problem was if it started then it should have clearly been destroyed if it was always orbiting its star very close. And we know there's lots of hot Jupiters around all types of stars. They orbit really close. So then did it migrate out? Did it come back in? It was a bit more baffling. So finding it on the opposite end, again, as you said, it was kind of what we expected. Now is actually even a little bit further of a question. Do these things generally migrate? Do they move? Was this further out and came in? The questions always pile up here. And so by finding more configurations of them and a variety of the systems is quite important to the understanding and the physics behind what drives them.
Well, just before we go, Brad, a look ahead to when I continue talking science. Dr. Benjamin Pope beams in to discuss his research into hidden exoplanets discovered by listening in a first for radio astronomy. While we know that other planets here in our solar system emit radio waves as well, and that's their magnetic fields interacting with solar winds, this is the first time we've detected them from exoplanets.
Absolutely. This effect has been predicted for a very long time, but never yet been observed. And this is a really, exciting for two reasons. One is that we now have a new radio window to look for exoplanets. So everything so far has been done in the optical. Now we have radio astronomy can join the action. And with the square kilometre array coming up, of which LOFAR is a prototype, you'll get 10 times more sensitivity and a much wider field of view. So we expect to find hundreds of these. And the other really exciting thing is that these radio waves indicate that the star is interacting with its planet, and that this interaction could lead to radiation being dumped on the planet, which strips away its atmosphere and renders an otherwise habitable world uninhabitable.
Well, members have first play access to that interview right now. Sign up with the join button below this video on YouTube, or go to the trek.zone/support. Get access for less than a cup of coffee a month. Brad, it's great to pick apart the stories of the week with you. We'll do it all again next week.
Thank you.